self-confessed astronomy addict. Behind me you can see my new telescope, which is the 80 by 600mm scope Refractor from 365 Astronomy. The thing is that I'm not just reviewing that one, I'm reviewing this one too. This is the 400mm focal length version of that telescope, and I've got this one to review as well. I'm not buying this scope, I'm buying that one. Zoltan at 365 Astronomy, when I wasn't sure which of the two scopes I wanted, very kindly sent me both, just so that I could give them a try. So this one's going back to him, that one I'm keeping, but to be honest, this is the better scope. I'm going to go through and explain why I'm keeping the not so good scope in a minute, but for the meantime, let's go and have a look at it. Okay, so let's start at the top and work our way down. Everything on this telescope, as with the 60mm finder that I've already done a review for, everything on this telescope is metal apart from the optics and the focuser. Now if you look down, you can see all the way through very clearly to my CLS filter on my camera, on my DSLR camera down here at the bottom, which shows you that the optics are fantastically clear. What I'm not sure you'll be able to see is that, I hope you can hear that, it's flocked. The whole tube, all the way down, right the way down to the focuser, flocked and baffled all the way through, which makes a fantastic difference to the contrast that you get with this particular scope. As I said before, it is a longer scope than normal. It's the 600mm focal length with an 80mm aperture, giving you an f ratio of f7.5, which I actually have found really quite good. Moving to the focuser, let's step around this side just so that you can see it is actually a dual speed Crayford focuser. Now I did take the focuser apart and have a look at it because there was a very slight grind on it when I got it. All it was a small bit of plastic had got into the mechanism during the manufacturing process. As soon as I took that out, it's been smooth and lovely ever since. I've even re-greased it, which was a nice easy job. It only takes about 10 minutes. It's very smooth though, this focuser. I've been very impressed with it. Now you can see here that we have a 2-inch focuser with centimetre and inch measurements on the focusing tube. The telescope does come with an adapter for a 1.25 eyepiece, and here it is. It has a brass compression ring, as does the 2-inch focuser. The thing is that this particular adapter doesn't have the T2 thread on it that I use for my 2-inch extension tube for focus on my camera. So I've taken this one out and put a spare one in that I had. This tube here, just to give you an idea, this tube I picked up from a mate. It cost me a whole £8 including the ring for the camera, and the focuser, the 1.25 not 1.25, the 2-inch adapter for the tube actually comes off my Newtonian scope just over there. So it's interchangeable, but the camera would be moving with it always anyway, so it's not a problem. I don't mind having to switch out. But it does mean that with this adapter, when I use this camera for visual work, I don't have to worry about marks on my right angle or on my eyepieces or anything like that. And as I said, the 2-inch focuser has the brass compression ring. Okay, now looking at the optics, you do have multi-coated optics. Let's just slide the dew shield back so that you can get a good look at the optics there. Multi-coated, fantastic. I've been so impressed with the view that this telescope has given me. Now the one thing I have noticed is how good the contrast has been, and as a way to evidence that, I want to show you some of the photographs that I've taken. Now these photographs were all done with a high, large moon, and also one of my neighbours has had a garden party and they had lights going. I'll explain everything when we're looking at the photos. The tube rings that you've got here came with this particular telescope, but the dovetails, these are my matching pair that I have on my Newt as well. If you look at the Newtonian, you can just see a dovetail on there. That was the original dovetail that came with this particular telescope, but as these two are matching, I'm just using those for the moment. I will eventually buy a secondary dovetail identical to that one, so that again I can just change over my 60mm finder and guider whenever I need to. In the meantime, let's go and have a look at my photos.
Okay, now hopefully you can see a lovely picture of Andromeda, and hopefully you can also see my mouse pointer. It's the first time I've used this program. It's a thing called Cam Studio, so let's see how it works. Now this was an image that I took last night. You can see that the centre of Andromeda is blown. It's a bit too light, but it's just 40 minutes worth of exposures that I've then stacked in Deep Sky Stacker. So we haven't got a huge amount of detail here. We had a 90% moon last night, so I didn't expect very much from it. I did, however, get, as you can see, quite a few good dust lanes, which I was quite impressed with. And that's where the contrast of the 600 by 80 scope comes in. The benefits of having it flocked and baffled is that the contrast is vastly improved. So even when you've got a high moon, you can still do some decent images. Let's flick to the next one. Now this is one that I took a wee while ago, probably about 4 weeks ago now. Dumbbell Nebula, again with the same scope. This was when my neighbours were having their garden party and they had their floodlights going, so I had that to the south, and then to the east I had a rising 80% moon, and I was looking sort of southeast, so I had it from both angles, and it was yeah, the viewing wasn't great, but the imaging, as you can see, has come out really well. I'm very pleased with this. Again, only about an hour's worth of data. We've got a wide shot here of the Whirlpool galaxy and its little partner galaxy just here that's feeding off of it. And again, this was last night. It's a nice. It shows you the actual field of view that you get with this scope. The other images have, of course, been adjusted slightly. The Andromeda one only a tiny bit. The Dumbbell Nebula, I've cropped it in a bit, but not as much as I could have done. But this one I've left it alone to show you how wide a view you do get. So you can pack an awful lot of information into one image, which you can see here. This is the Witch's Broomstick, part of the Veil Nebula. Again, this is only 40 minutes to an hour's worth of data. I was doing 5-minute exposures here and had a bit of a camera wobble on a couple of them, but that was my own fault, tripping over my mount, so I can't really blame anything other than user error. But I'm very pleased with this, considering the length of exposure time that I've had on it. I will be going back to the Veil later on, so I'll be adding some more data to it, but I've been very pleased with this so far. So there we are. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my camera and we'll talk about the scope and why I'm buying it. Thanks very much. Hold on for a moment.
Andy back with my ugly mug again. So why am I buying this scope instead of the 400mm version that I've already said is the better scope? It's because of the contrast. The flocking and the baffling make a huge difference to the image that you get. That little scope has a fantastic quality of image, and the glass is great. The whole optics, the setup, the feel, it feels like a good solid piece of kit. This feels just as solid. It feels like a proper telescope. It's bigger. So from the point of view of when you're out doing any shows or you're doing public displays and that sort of thing, I think this is the better scope anyway, because it does actually give you a more impressive item to show. To an astronomer, I think the smaller scope would probably be the scope of choice because it's f5 rather than f7.5. Trying to find a field flattener for this one is going to be fun. I'm sure that they do make one, but I've got to find it. As it is, without the field flattener, I've been very pleased with the images that I've got so far. As I said, I've only done hour-long exposures in total for each of the images, so there isn't a huge amount of detail, but what I have got out of it, I'm very, very pleased with. The other reason I want to buy this scope is because it's f7.5. I have a lot of f5 scopes. I have a 102mm Skywatcher. I've got my Newtonian. They're both f5. This is the only f7.5 scope that I own, and I can see me keeping it for quite a while, and I can see me using it for an awful lot of imaging, even though I think it was primarily designed to be used for visual astronomy, and it does a fantastic job of that as well. I was at a Perseid meteor shower event, and I took this telescope with my right angle and a few eyepieces, particularly my little Skywatcher Zoom eyepiece, which is a very versatile eyepiece for using on public displays because you can just very quickly change the amount of magnification that you're getting. I ended up with a queue of people waiting to have a look at Saturn because I'd put the scope on Saturn, I'd left it there quite happily, called someone over, they called someone else over, who called someone else over, we ended up with a queue. I think I got to look through the scope about twice for the entire night, but everyone loved the scope, and I had other astronomers, other members of the club, who were turning around and saying how much better the image was through this scope than through their own small refractors. So although I'm saying it's not as good as the 400mm scope, it's still excellent, and it's still fantastic value for money. And because of that, I'm buying it. Hello, my name's Ewan, and I'm a self-confessed astronomy addict. Behind me you can see my new telescope, which is the 80 by 600mm scope Refractor from 365 Astronomy. The thing is that I'm not just reviewing that one, I'm reviewing this one too. This is the 400mm focal length version of that telescope, and I've got this one to review as well. I'm not buying this scope, I'm buying that one. Zoltan at 365 Astronomy, when I wasn't sure which of the two scopes I wanted, very kindly sent me both, just so that I could give them a try. So this one's going back to him, that one I'm keeping, but to be honest, this is the better scope. I'm going to go through and explain why I'm keeping the not so good scope in a minute, but for the meantime, let's go and have a look at it. Okay, so let's start at the top and work our way down. Everything on this telescope, as with the 60mm finder that I've already done a review for, everything on this telescope is metal apart from the optics and